so you know.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Today is September 14th, 2023. My name is Amy Paretsky, and I'm the chair of the Design Review Committee. This open meeting of the Design Review Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 22, the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law March 29th, 2023. All members of the Design Review Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The act allows the Design Review Committee to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda, unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation. This meeting will not feature public comment. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Lisa Maselli,
Here.
Dario DeMar,
Here.
and Dave Veron. How does he unmute?
Here.
Oh, there, he's got it.
Here.
Okay, great, thanks. And Amy Paretsky's here, and staff, when I call your name, Lori Connors,
Here.
Bob Federico.
Here.
The meeting ground rules. The chair will invite each speaker or applicant on the agenda by name to make a presentation and speak to their application. Participants will provide their full name and hold until their name is called. Each speaker will be asked to mute their phone or computer when not speaking and to speak clearly in a way to help generate accurate meeting minutes. Those responding will be asked to wait until the floor is yielded to them by the chair. Speakers who wish to respond to the comments of others do so through the chair, taking care to identify themselves. It's now 8:34, and first on our agenda is 309 Main Street. And I see we have Tom Reardon, Marshall Gould, James Petrot, and Sam Lodoff on the on today. And is there someone from your team that would like to go over the changes since we last met?
Amy, hi, Marshall
Hi.
Gould, sorry. So good morning to the board as well. I'm on the meeting this morning. I was not at the prior meeting, but since nobody else spoke up, I would just say, I believe we have Tom Reardon here, and I believe we have James Tatro, and obviously the property owner, Sam Lodoff. Am I correct? Are they all on? Do you see them? Thank you. Okay,
Yep.
So not having been at the last meeting, I would suggest that if there were any changes to the building or the engineering, we could start, and I'll ask Tom if there were any changes that he has, and then if he doesn't, we'll move on to the engineering.
Who is going to share their screen? James, are you going to do that?
I could do it, but maybe Tom should share his in regard to the building discussion.
Okay. I'll try.
Oh, okay. I thought it was more certain.
I just updated the operating system on my Mac and it's odd.
We'll just do the best we can.
Okay. And by the way, Larry Green should be joining us any minute. I just resent him the link, and so he should be jumping in. He's the landscape architect on the project.
Okay.
Lori, are the latest designs uploaded on the ZBA? Because I can pull them up just in case Tom can't. I'll just have it ready.
I believe so, although Tom sent me an email this morning and I didn't have time to open it, so I'm not sure if there was anything new.
Okay. Well, it looks like Tom's got it going.
Can you see this photograph?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Tom Reardon and Company. I'm representing Sam Ludoff as the project architect. This is the existing 1,800 square foot building. It's 40 by 45, 1-story, slab on grade, masonry block, flat roof, built in 1982. And it's been a food service restaurant since its inception as a submarine shop and then later as Texas Barbecue. This is the south elevation facing Main Street or Route 20. This is the most prominent elevation as you're driving from the Marlboro line heading west. So you see the south and the east elevation. The existing arborvitaes there are on the left, which is on the west side of the site. So this property is in Business East. There are 3 special permits required for groundwater 3, site plan review, and for a drive-through window for food service. The area is surrounded by other strip malls. This one's Brittany's, which is on the corner of Bartlett and Main. So this is over about across the street where you have Christo's Driving, Athens Pizza. You can see these 1980 structures with all the parking in the front, very little landscaping. Nothing spectacular about the architecture. This is 25 Bartlett. You've got Crockett's. You also have performance vehicles or something like that. Directly across the street, you have another 1980s 1-story strip mall. No landscaping. Kind of a mess right now. Let's see. So when we were studying the site, we said, okay, this is a car-based area. All the buildings are built in the 80s prior to bylaws controlling the access and so forth. So we're looking at what kind of precedents there could be for an ice cream shop on a state highway. So we did a little poking around the internet. We find images like Dell's ice cream, which you see throughout New England. Some of the early car cultures were kind of streamlined, kind of imitate ocean liners and airplanes. One of the fun things they used to do is the use of fluorescent light to make the building look like a sign. So then we started looking at what architectural styles might work for this particular site. We did a few sketches, tried different patterns of material, different color schemes, kind of a little Art Deco. Different signage patterns. Let's see, where's E? Some grays, some warm tones, different shades of orange, round signs, ice cream cone signs. So those are the things we're talking about. And we ended up with a scheme that uses a very light palette of grays with the orange signage sign, L's Ice Cream. This is a view of the building facing south. You can see the drive up on the left. Lar, the landscape designer, was the one who put together these renderings for us. This is the facing east where the order and pickup would be. I think we have one more view here. Yes, this is this is showing the area where you'd exit the ice cream shop to go over to the picnic area, which is on the west corner of the site. I know you didn't have much opportunity to discuss the architecture in last meeting because I was not available. But if you'd like to discuss this now, or we could go on and do the site changes that James has. No, that's your call, Amy.
In my opinion, while you have the pictures up, it's up to the board members, but I think we should discuss the building while we have the pictures.
Okay,
I agree.
Okay. Does anyone have any input? Dario or Lisa?
Well, I'll definitely go first. I can appreciate the examples that you've used. This just looks like an updated version of many of them. You've also not put in some of the other buildings that are there, which is the Tavern on the Square, which is probably the newest building that was erected and looks very nice. It's got parking in the front and it's got beautiful window boxes and it's just done very nicely. And just 2 buildings down from that going west is what was Tomiolo's garden center. Yep, there you go. So to compare this ice cream design to the past, we've already made decisions on what we want it to look like for future. We had a master plan of which you were involved in, and that's definitely not a New England colonial style. No peaked roofs. I just don't think that it's. I don't think it's going to last the test of time. I think it's going to look just like the other ones that you pointed out. I do love the fact that there's green on the other side of the driveway in this picture, but I doubt that that's really going to be happening. I think it's supposed to be right up to the tree line if those trees survive. So I have my concerns that this is just not, the visual is just not what we want, even though it's making the lot look better because so many of our buildings are empty and left empty and half pulled apart. I don't think that's a fair comparison. So that's my remarks on the building, and I'll leave the rest up to Dario.
Yeah, and the rest of the team, I guess. I agree as well. It's not New England. If you type New England architecture on Google, there'll be nothing that looks like this. And I think showing examples of things we don't want to do was a good example, because what you showed is what we're trying to change, not what we want to copy. The Art Deco stuff was awesome back in the 50s and 60s. But again, it has nothing to do with what we're trying to do in Northborough with the New England look. And New England architecture, not by my definition, I think is probably starts with the colonial, the Cape, the salt box. But if you go into more commercial, you can certainly have different styles, none of which this would show up under the definition of New England. I think the site, great improvements. And actually, I like the building if it were on the Jersey Shore or up in Revere Beach in a more commercial, fun, exciting, Old Orchard Beach, somewhere where all this cool, funky stuff is, but that's not what Northborough is trying to be. So that's where I am on this. I think everything else works pretty well. I'm looking at the person walking up the sidewalk. I would check that slope to make sure it meets the ADA requirements. I think it's 8.33% to get up there. And again, just because I'm looking at the picture, they do make handicap accessible picnic tables as well, where one side extends out so the person in the wheelchair can stay in the wheelchair and enjoy the ice cream. So that's my comment. Again, I think it's a nice building, but not appropriate for what the Northborough master plan and all our design review stuff is suggesting that we enforce and employ.
Okay, thanks, Dario and Lisa, and I agree with them.
May I respond, Madam Chair?
Sure, definitely.
So it's interesting that you would suggest that there is a prescriptive design vocabulary we're supposed to use in Business East. And I'd like to know where this language is in our town bylaw or design guidelines.
It's in the master plan, shows a lot of examples. The design review guidelines show a lot of what looks good, what doesn't look good. And the general direction we've been given on the master plan, which is not limited to anywhere in Northborough. The master plan incorporates all of Northborough, is to get a more of a New England charm look. All the goods and bads are pointed out in almost every one of those documents, but I will say that's my opinion, what we've been directed to do, and what we've said since this was submitted day one.
Well, I would contend that it does conform with the design guidelines because the prescriptive language you're suggesting do not occur in the bylaws. And the purpose of the design review, as it says on page 718, the purpose of design review is to preserve historic land uses and structures and to promote architectural and ecological considerations for the betterment of the community. And the examples we show in the design guidelines are examples not of an architectural style, but of projects where they had the proper entry facing the road, they had proper pedestrian access, landscape buffering, varied colors and articulations. Those are generic concepts that we wanted to encourage in the downtown business area. And that's what's the guideline says, and that's what this building conforms to. It is not near any historic structures, and it's not required to be historic in those narrow terms that you're suggesting.
Then I'll just respectfully disagree. It does not, in my opinion, help the betterment of the community at all. And that's a subjective opinion, and that's where I would stand on that, if that's what you want to do.
Well, I want you to interpret the design guidelines and the bylaws, not offer personal
That's what I'm
opinion.
interpreting. Betterment of the community. I think this does not help the community. I think it hurts the community based on what it looks like.
When I'm on
It's-
page 12 of the design review guidelines, it shows encouraged detailed articulated facades and discouraged unarticulated facades. And I know this adds somewhat, but it shows a Walgreens that has the flat roof, same type of almost materials. At one of the last MPIC meetings we talked about, they were talking about awnings, but the awnings were more like the cloth awnings. I think across the street you showed at the Tavern on the Square, there were some awnings where this is more of like a modern mechanical type look. You know, I'm not an architect, so I'm not using the right wording, but
It looks like the Burger King in Westfield,
yeah,
the big sign.
yeah. Versus the ice cream down the street that looked more welcoming and looked more
Mhm.
like a, a mom and pop type of ice cream, which is what I thought they were trying to do here versus a chain drive-through.
So you're suggesting I should make this look like a 19th century house? I mean, that's,
No,
No.
not at all. Make it look New England.
If I could throw out an idea here, please, through the chair.
Sure.
Thank you, Amy. In looking at the bylaw, Tom read the first paragraph, and then there were some other objectives. And if you look on the bylaw, it says to encourage development that is distinctive and appropriate to locations within other business districts. We're not in the downtown, and supportive of the function of these other districts as gateways into Northborough and supportive of the function of Business East and Business West as gateways to downtown Northborough. If we have all the buildings that are there now and then say, okay, we're going to dig into the sand here and say, this has to look, I'll use the term colonial, because as I drive through New England has, and I'm not an architect either, so I'm speaking as somebody who has traveled a lot around New England. And yes, the homes that were built in the 1700s and 1800s, for the most part, had what you're referring to as a colonial look and peaked roof. But in terms of businesses, I don't see very many businesses that have that colonial look as you drive around New England. And as you drive around Northborough, there aren't many businesses. And I know that as you drive through other towns, whether it be Hudson or some of the other towns that have been referred to as active and good-looking communities, they incorporate a mix of different architecture. And in this case, we're taking the words development that is distinctive and appropriate. And I think we have to understand what that means. We don't want this to look like a colonial house. That's number one. And if we say appropriate to locations, this building historically, for at least the last, I'm going to say at least, I've been in town 50 years, and I knew when it was Stan's Subshot, and I knew the Tarkas, and this is what it was. And that goes back 40 and more years ago. It's always been this building, and you saw from the early pictures that this building is a tremendous eyesore. This is not a big business going in. It is not a chain. It will never be a big chain. I hear people talking, oh, it might become a Burger King or it might become a Starbucks. Absolutely not. And we're prepared to give protection to that when we get to the ZBA hearing. This is a place that's going to be in the summertime, in the warmer months. It's going to be an attraction that Northborough doesn't have, which is a primarily ice cream business in this part of town. It's important that have to understand we're up close to the end of Northborough here as you travel Route 20 East. And for us to make it colonial, when somebody drives by, they're not going to recognize that it's ice cream or breakfast or lunch sandwiches or salads. It's not an eat-in restaurant. So we wanted to have, accordance with the bylaw, a development distinctive and appropriate to locations. So for people who say it might look like a Burger King or a Starbucks, that's the type of distinctive look in New England that is associated with food establishments that do a very minor percentage of its business as eat-in business, whether it be a Starbucks or Burger King. But trust me, this owner has made very clear to me, this is not now, nor will it ever be a chain Burger King or a Starbucks. And we're prepared to work with the ZBA for conditions to that effect. What we do want it to be is distinctive so that as people drive by, they won't think, oh, here's a colonial office building or here's a colonial retail store like so many of them in this part of town. You are right that across the street, the neighborhood tavern that used to be another restaurant location, that is part of a very large multi-million-dollar development where, appropriate to all the uses in there, they could spend a lot of money to build the building. This is a small business, and what we don't want to do with small businesses, in my opinion, is in Northborough, is make it such that their startup costs are going to be so big that they say, maybe we shouldn't do it. So when people say I drive by and it looks like a something, 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 and if those are food service establishments, well, if that's what you think of, then I think that proves the point that this is distinctive and appropriate for the intended use. And because there aren't regs that say all new buildings must be colonial in appearance or anything like that, we tried to do something that we think will vastly improve the appearance of the building and of the lot, and I think that has been accomplished. And I hope the board will look at it from that perspective.
Maybe if I may, I'd like to address some of that.
Sure.
The buildings that have been shown are buildings that were built a long time ago, shows what they look like many years later. If you go to Westboro and you look at their Dunkin' Donuts, it's built beautifully. It's got brick, made out of brick. It looks like a 2-story building. It's quite lovely. You go to Hopkinton, their Dunkin' Donuts is quite lovely. As a matter of fact, it does have peaked roofs, and it doesn't have to look like a home, but it looks like a business that falls into what their designs have been brought up to look like. This is not that. It is distinctive. We're not going to say it is distinctive, and it's something that catches your eye, to be sure. But we have said from day one that this was modern and it wasn't appropriate, and we have heard nothing but reasons why you're going to continue to put it on there. You can go in many different towns, Sudbury and Wellesley and all sorts of different towns that have more of designs that do go into that New England look without going to the far left or the far right. They do have a set standard. You go in certain towns and you can't even use color. You have to use black and white. This building is being rehabbed from an existing structure. It's being left in its state, and we're trying to work around that. I can appreciate trying to save money, but we are trying to make Northborough collectively look better, not look like everybody has their own island. This is an island. It doesn't look like what we're trying to create here. And it's hard to say why people, well, it's not hard to say why people think it's going to be another fast food, because that's really what it looks like. And it's going to have a drive-through for ice cream, which is a little unusual. It's not even, there wasn't even a try to make it look a little bit more like what we're trying to make. It's an argument, and you're trying to use semantics and words. So conforming, it's not. And I'm sorry to say that you can talk for 3 hours, but you're not going to get any change in my way to look at it right now.
Well, it would be helpful if the Design Review Committee would publish clear directives to the design community that you do have prescriptive rules now that have not existed for the last 12 years while we've had the design guidelines. This is a new interpretation, and it's not documented in any of the bylaws or the guidelines that are made public. I mean, you bring up this New England design style, which is not defined anywhere. I mean, are we talking federal style?
Yes,
Italian?
any of the New England styles, federal, Queen Anne,
Greek revival?
Victorian,
Classical
Greek revival would be
Romanesque
great.
revival?
Greek revival would be great because it's used in New England, it's used in Boston. They're all that. This is none of them. This is cartoon texture, Art Deco, bright orange sign. I want to make money so people come here, not I want to sit in New England and fit in and help the community grow to what it's trying to be now. And I think we will change and modify the guidelines, but it's not like we didn't comment on this day one. And it's not that hard to make this fit in. McDonald's brought their arches down to 14 inches in Freeport, Maine, because their guidelines said, we're not going to look at your big arches. I know they make you a ton of money, but that's not what we're trying to accomplish in our town. And we're heading that direction with the Master Plan Implementation Committee. It's not all published, You came and asked our opinion. We gave you the same opinion every time you came in, and you keep trying to do something that's not within our opinion. I don't know about all the legal ramifications. I'm with Lisa 100%.
Well, it's just a novel idea that we now have prescriptive design guidelines that haven't been in place before. And it's just, it's unreasonable to spring it on developers.
I think when you look through the encouraged and discouraged, it matches more of the discouraged than the encouraged. When I have the design review guidelines right here.
In every case.
And I do think yes, I've been asking to have more detail and a vision that's actually placed that everybody can see. It hasn't been part of the booklet before, and it needs to be changed because we always have a few people thinking one way and another person thinking another way. We need to get all on the same page, and we need to have something there that everybody will agree to. And then from that point on, better direction for the developers. But you were well aware of what we would say after the first meeting when it was done by pencil. Again, it is very distinctive. It's just, it does not going to stand the test of time. And you know, we're arguing over semantics.
With all due respect, I know I'm not going to convince Dario or Lisa or Amy on this, but I do just want to say when clients come to me or where we go to this town or other towns and say we would like to develop something, and if we show the picture or the first couple of pictures that were shown today of a clear eyesore that is in a gateway to the community, and this has always been a small building. I know that it was most recently Texas Barbecue. The building was not vastly improved when it was Texas Barbecue. And as you drive into town, if you remember, this is on the north side of Route 20. As you are driving in from 495, you are not in a neighborhood of businesses that are colonial on either side of the road for the most part, other than the very large building that was built across the street where the neighborhood tavern is. And anybody would look at these pictures and say, this is a vast improvement. You've all sort of agreed that it's distinctive for the type of business it is going to be. If we're trying to make this site more attractive, but still make it successful for a small businessman, if it were, and I know that Lisa has mentioned Dunkin' Donuts. The Dunkin' Donuts in Westboro, I'm aware of. I know the back and forth that occurred there. That is in the heart of downtown Westboro. It's right by the railroad tracks. There's another one, a pizza place that is even closer to the center of town. They required that they build it 2-story high and colonial in nature. This is absolutely not in the center of town. This is a gateway with virtually no other businesses before this until you get past where East Main Street meets Route 20. Then you have this, the businesses across the street, and further up Route 20, largely they are strip malls. To say we're going to dig in, and now this has to be colonial in appearance, I think is, particular where those guidelines are not part of something that has been approved. I think you're putting a tremendous burden on the property owner who clearly wants to improve the property, but he also wants to be successful. And I think that you're more concerned about colonial appearance than you are the other aspects that might allow this business to survive.
I guess I'll comment to that. It doesn't have to cost a penny more. And I know you conveniently left off the building next to Brittany's, which would be wonderful here as an example. It's got, beautiful fronts, it's got awnings, it's got just wonderful seating areas. And that was also, I think, that, and even Brittany's itself, conveniently left off as buildings that are around here. That building, I think it's a construction, it used to be the ice cream shop, was beautiful as an ice cream shop. And that's right there. It's a little bit hard when you don't show those buildings as things around us and you show examples of what we obviously don't ever want to see again, which I think is a great point. When you show some of these little strip malls, they're wonderful examples of what we're trying to change. Not what's here. And what's here, if it was all evil and a bunch of axe murderers, we're saying we don't want them anymore. We want this to be nicer. So that's how I view the buildings that you showed as examples. They're perfect examples of what we don't want. Yes, they're here, and we're trying to change that.
Well, actually, Demario, the examples I show are abutting structures, and part of the requirements of the design review is to show the buildings that are adjacent to and abutting the property. They're not
Brittany's.
shown up as examples of what we want to copy. It's just establishing what the context is.
Exactly, and we're trying to change that context, Tom. That's the whole point. A butter is Brittany's. They're right across the street. Couldn't be closer. And the one next to it is spectacular. They're within the same footage or distance as the ones you showed, but I think we're conveniently left off.
Well, you're reading into it. I was just showing
Fair
you the
enough.
abutting properties.
I've been on that side of the fence most of my life, so I do understand how this works.
I think we've gone over the building. We know what this committee is interested in. Perhaps since 2 of the 3 special permits relate to the building, the third is the site. I think we probably ought to go now to the site unless the owner or Tom have anything else that we want to present.
I'm all set. Thank you.
James, do you want to give the site overview for site plan purposes?
Sure. Oops.
Thank you.
Sure. I'll share screen now. On. Let's see if that loads up. Okay, you should be looking at the presentation plan done by Larry Green. Can you see that?
Yes.
And I apologize, I have a giant cursor in every respect except looking at the shared screen for some reason. We made a couple of changes to the site plan pursuant to Lori's comments and comments from the design review committee. We added, it doesn't really show up in this presentation plan, added another bollard in front of the handicapped striped spot between the 2 HC spaces. We had actually looked at creating a larger blocked out space. I mean, I'm on the east side of the building now with the cursor. Only I actually found a building with a setup like that several towns away. And I talked to somebody there and they actually found that if you blocked out this space, it actually just encouraged pedestrians to spill out into that area. And that it actually didn't end up really being, I guess I'd say a safer layout. And that with the sidewalk, with the bollards sort of as a somewhat suggestive limit of pedestrian area actually was probably a little better. So we had considered, as I think, Amy, we were talking about blocking out a larger space right in front. But looking at another site that had that, it didn't actually seem to accomplish the goal it was aimed for. So we added another bollard in front of, as was suggested, in front of the HC space. We added the electric line from the north side of the building, the conduit that exists now, the water line that comes in from over at Bartlett Street now, that comes in just this side of all these arborvitae to the building, the line out of the building to the septic system. We also, in the interim, we had a discussion at the site. I'm over at East Main Street now with at the entrance there with the cursor. We had a visit at the site with Mr. Charpentier, head of DPW, and his new assistant. And we looked at the vegetation within the right of way. Because in this strip, I'm north of the building now, between the proposed curb line and the existing curb line on East Main Street, call it half of this area is on the property and half is in the right of way. Now, in order to provide reasonable pedestrian access, we're proposing a 5-foot walk along what will be a new curb line at that existing gutter line to the site. But that still leaves varying distances, but let's say an average of 12 to 14 feet of distance from that sidewalk to the right-of-way line. And there are some existing trees there, along with a whole lot of bittersweet. But and we looked at those, and the head of DPW, Mr. Charpentier, looked at those, but found, like the arborist we had contracted to take a look at them, that they're really in very poor shape. And what Mr. Charpentier suggested is taking them down. And what this plan shows is you see large tree representation here, large new hardwood tree representation here, and here, and here, and here, and here are plantings to replace those trees that are in kind of rough shape right now and are only getting further strangled out by the invasives. So we looked at, again, that area within the right-of-way that's between the right-of-way line and the proposed new sidewalk. And we're going to do additional plantings to address the unfortunately necessary removal of those trees that are getting strangled. In addition, pursuant to, I'm over by East Main Street intersection with 20 now. In addition, pursuant to the suggestion and urging of the town planner, we added additional tree plantings of birch tree plantings, both towards the, circling around the east end of the site and along the Route 20 frontage near Bartlett Street. We would actually then be in excess of the required number of street trees, but we had been trying to increase visibility of the site, and the town, Lori was asking for more plantings along that Route 20 frontage. So we added some tree plantings along that frontage. I would also note that I apologize for a little inconsistency in the views that were shown. The walk is actually going to be a paved walk, at least all the way to the first pair of picnic tables, where those would be the HC accessible. And I think actually we're going to end up just making the whole thing a paved walk, because there's only a little bit beyond that. So I'm going to apologize for a little bit of inconsistency in the representation, but we're going to have that walk as paved, and we will present HC accessible picnic tables, as Dario mentioned, so that there's no question of the ADA compliance of those, at least lowest ones. And yeah, the grade is accessible for HC to the first couple of picnic tables. Beyond that, I think the grade might be excessive beyond that which is allowed. So we would have the first couple be accessible, but again, perhaps not beyond that. that's the primary, I think those are the primary things that we changed. And I just would also note that as we were out there on last Thursday, we had where we met, there was, you could see the car counting strips in the road. That traffic count and report is in the works. Scott Thornton, the project's traffic engineer, is actually on vacation. That's why he's not here right now, but his firm is probably processing the information right now, and we will have a report available before the upcoming ZBA meeting. So I don't know if you want to take a couple of looks at from various points of view. Mr. Green presented some extra perspective views on the site. This is looking eastward. You're at the intersection of Route 20 and Bartlett Street. I'm going to circle the cursor. There's the building over there. Here are the couple of additional, I think, birch trees. I'm going to circle the cursor, I think, on each of them that were added pursuant to Lori's urging. Next view you see is this is on the looking from the east side of the building. Again, actually, I apologize here, but a couple of inconsistencies where I'm moving the cursor. There should be another bollard here. Sorry about that. Let's jump to another view. Here's front. This is all what you're already looking at before. This is a view from East Main Street looking into the site. So you're probably in front of number 181 here. You're looking into the site, and I forget the name of that strip mall on the other side of Route 20. I think that's where I'm circling the cursor in the background here. But this is looking in from East Main Street, and I'm gonna move things just a little bit so I see Lori has her hand raised. It says, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to do anything.
Sure, if Lori did.
I just had a quick comment. The
Okay.
addition of that bollard, that's going to be in the middle of the ADA ramp. So you're going to make that unusable for people with wheelchairs. So I think you have to remove that bollard.
Okay, would we be able to do anything? I mean, there's usually a, prescriptive at least 3 foot plus travel path. There would still be that on each side of the bollard, as the striped strip is actually 8 feet wide. So there'd be 4 feet to each side of it. Would that still
But
make
I
it
just
accessible?
suggest that that's more of a building and code issue. And Lori, your point's well taken, and I think that our engineer and Bob Federico can discuss where, if any place right there, the bollard should go, and if it has to be moved, it will be.
Yeah, and that was my concern about having a bollard though, because the ice cream places I visited usually put planters and, I don't know if the handicap ramp can be off to the side of the middle of the building. Like if somebody across the way backs up and hits the gas and goes backwards, they're going right into people standing in line. And I went over to Muleman's, and they don't allow any parking at all. Their whole section in front of the lines is blocked off. And the people come across the lot, just the parking lot from the other side. Like, to me, it's a concern to have the parking right in front of where people are standing in line without some sort of protection. I understand making the handicap ramp, and we definitely need that. But having the handicap ramp right in front of where someone's going to back up and possibly hit everybody in line, I don't know. Those are two different.
James, could you put the picture back up that showed the easterly view and where you pointed out that there was a bollard? Okay, so right here, I'm sure that bollards could go in such a way that you're still leaving more than enough space for a bollard there. But
We
those
could do,
bollards will also stop cars. Now, how deep is the I'll call it sidewalk, but how deep is the concrete area between the building and those windows up to where the bollards and the parking lot are?
I'll get it wrong. I apologize, but I believe this is 12 to 15 feet. I forget the exact.
And
dimension.
that's what I wanted to point out for Amy, that we've intentionally made this quite deep so that there's room for plenty of people. And if anybody would be backing up from the other side.
Marshall, the other thing that
If
I
I could
wanted-
say one thing, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but this picture is not accurate. Because there is a 6-inch tall vertical concrete curb. So the ramp is in the middle there where or it should be, where the striping is, and then you have an angle down, so the concrete curb angles down, so you can't put a bollard anywhere on that ramp. So there is not only these bollards, but there's also vertical concrete curb that would prevent somebody from driving up onto the pedestrian area.
correct.
Good point.
So a car can't go over a curb?
They
Not
would
with
have
a
to be
bollard.
going awfully fast and then they'd hit a bollard anyway.
Right.
Amy, this is code. They don't
Right.
have a choice. They
Right.
can't obstruct the ADA ramp.
Yep. They're just,
Even if they wanted to, they can't.
right. There's the other ice cream places I've been to just don't allow parking in front of the line. Even if it's 15 feet, you're gonna have people spilling out.
I'm sure Bob can speak to this, but by code, you have to have those ADA parking spaces as close to the building as possible.
Right, that's why they're in that location is you are prescribed to have the shortest path for those spaces to where somebody's going, be it an entrance or in this case, a window at which they're gonna order.
If I may, Amy?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I've got the Mass AAB CMR 521 right in front of me. And I've been looking at this up as you guys have been discussing. Handicapped accessible spaces shall be located as closely as possible to where they need to go. Okay, that's a direct requirement in the code. Okay, that striped loading zone is a required width, and the parking spots are a minimum specific size, both in length and width, as is the passenger loading zone. If you're going to have a 6-inch curb delineating the parking area from the pedestrian area, and you want to put a bollard in between, I'm not seeing anywhere in the code where it would allow that.
And that's why I say our engineer needs to sit with you, Bob. So I think that's one of the very minor matters on the site plan review. That's I think more when we go for the building permit, but we
Yeah.
definitely know there's going to be straight, absolute vertical concrete curbing that cars will not be driving over.
I mean, in this world, there are certain things that you cannot get around, and the AAB is very strict. We went through that with the playgrounds here in town. I've seen what the AAB can do for violations in many other towns, including my own in Grafton. They are no joke. And they take what they do with a rabid passion. So if it's in the book, it's okay. If it's not in the book, you're going to know about it.
I agree. It's just with the outdoor dining nowadays, like everywhere I've been outside, people are dining close to the road or close to parking, and I always feel safe because they do have it blocked off.
Well, I mean, there's nothing that says you can't ask or request or require, in addition to the raised curb, heavy planters being there so that adds a little more protection, maybe a little more visual prettiness, if you will. I mean, it's, you don't have to stop at the bollards or you don't have to stop at the curb if you're worried about that. I mean, you get any vehicle going fast enough, it's going to go through, well, except for most bollards hold up well. But we had a vehicle into a building this week that went through the curb and went through the 5-foot planting area and still broke the building. And so it's just a matter of, how unconscious the driver is or how fast he's going.
Yep.
As much as you can do to prevent pedestrian accidents, you're never going to get 100% of it.
Right.
It's a big world and people do crazy things.
Yep. I'd gone to different ice cream places to see what they do. And a lot of them did, either didn't have the parking in front of where the lines were or really protected the people in case someone did, unfortunately go in back in or pull into the line.
Yeah, we understand the concern, and I will sit down with Mr. Federico when he's available to discuss further. The thing I think we would just note is, the alternative to having parking here is that parking is not next to the building and you're actually forcing people to walk across traffic. And that's I think even less desirable of a situation. There's nothing that's a perfect solution in regard to safety. We just have to make the best reasonable choices that we can. But we'll work with Mr. Federico to come up with a solution that's the best option that we can.
Okay.
I'm gonna jump just back to where we were. Again, we were looking at the different views. This was probably from in front of number 181, looking into the access into East Main Street from the site. This is looking into the site's parking, and again, across the way is that strip mall on the other side of 20 from this view. This is a view actually probably again right in front of number 181, looking down East Main Street. Here is where I'm running the cursor. Here is the site's entrance onto East Main Street. Again, just showing the vegetation, the landscaping. Again, the new hardwood trees that we planted to replace the ones that are right now in very bad shape. And here is a view from the property at 168 East Main Street. I think it's not really accurate in showing the sidewalk ending here. This is our sidewalk, which would be connecting to the existing sidewalk on the south side of East Main Street. That's in front of number 168. This is looking in the distance towards where East Main Street forces drivers heading eastward to turn and make a right turn onto 20, and shows where vehicles would be coming off of Route 20 westbound onto East Main Street. But those are different views around the site. Again, I'm going to jump back to just the overall plan view. So the changes we made were to try and address and there's still a bit of work there to do, the comments from Lori, from the town planner. And I think we've got a reasonable solution that both sides can live with in regard to the extra tree planting along Route 20, extra birch trees proposed on the landscaping plan. And we're nearly there as to addressing the other issues. I just, as a quick note, one of the other items circling at the corner of the building had been getting a detailed bike rack, which we added to the plan. There's tons of those out there. So I would say that, again, the bottom line is that this plan that you have before you, the latest iteration of the site plan, is very similar to the one before. It's just with a few refinements, and probably a couple more are coming. But we're, I don't know if you want to take over, Marshall. I think we've got to do some work on both the site plan and the building to hopefully address all the issues that remain. I'm gonna. I guess I could.
Lori, did you have any more comments in your comment letter that you felt were outstanding that you'd like to address with them?
Well, there are some comments, but I think that they could be, they're not necessarily design review committee comments. I think they could be addressed by the ZBA, and also a plan review, modification, particularly having to do with the lighting, James. I don't think you want to not light the entrances, the driveway entrances, so I'd like to see that change.
Understood.
Actually, some of them actually shut off. And then.
Someone needs to mute. I can hear something.
I think it's Bob.
I'd like to address a couple of things on that last plan, if we could put it back up.
Oh, okay, sure. The plan view?
Yeah, the last piece that you had, Jim.
Okay.
So just a couple of, again, some ADA questions. We were going to put some sort of a crosswalk from the north entrance to across the driveway, because when the cars are parking, coming back and forth, somebody in a wheelchair, who we know that there's a resident that does come in regularly to do things on his own in a electronic wheelchair. We were going to put a crosswalk between that opening and coming into the proper, what I'm saying? Yes.
Okay, so are you looking for a walk to go from these points?
Yes, we talked about that because no safety for them to come through. So that was one of the things we talked about the last meeting.
Okay, I apologize. I missed that in my notes. I apologize.
And then again, with the picnic tables, and I hear a lot of this because I have a few people that are handicapped, and I talk with them regularly, that, it has to be obviously a hard concrete path up to the tables, at least to the first, if you're going to do two, or one, if you're going to do one. But the table itself has got to be on a cement slab. If anything happens in terms of the land gets soft or wet, these wheelchairs sink into the ground and they can't be moved. They're heavy. So then you have to get the individual out of the chair, then raise the chair up physically and get it back onto a hard surface. And you don't realize it unless you've seen it. And I think that at the very least, one of those tables has to be on a slab big enough for somebody to come in and, comfortably be with their chair.
Good point.
So that's the second. The third is, I'm kind of curious. So we have these two handicapped spots painted in front of the building. Is there a reason that you didn't use the one that you first come into starting, instead of leaving one space for a regular car there? Yes, right there.
I think the reason is that it sort of centered here. It's accessible. It's the closest one to both ordering and picking up. Whereas if a handicapped person using this space here, maybe a little further from one of the windows, whether it's the most northerly is ordering or picking up. I just thought in the center here was going to be the most accessible to both.
So, well, from the picture, it looks like the very first window is low and for the handicapped individual. So the one that is more south. Yeah, see the window where the little person in red is standing? Oh, no, I see it right there too. Okay.
Yeah, there's two. So I guess I was thinking those would be, and again, I'm not sure which is going to be order and pickup, but in the center here, they were sort of the least distance between the combination of the two.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. But I'm just concerned because sometimes regular workers will come and park a little bit closer or over the line. And that leaves less room for the individual that's, got the handicapped opening.
Okay. Well, again, we are making this is gonna be a van accessible 8-foot strip here. Between the two spaces, the two regular 9-foot spaces. So it does provide a pretty good accessibility for if this person is using a little extra room, that the handicap user can use a little bit of the strip here. And have a perfectly reasonable space.
So, and that then leads back down to the crosswalk from the north corner. So you're going to come down where the cursor is, and that's got the ramp, obviously, that comes down so that they can then go in to it. But when it's coming across, I know it's going to be hard to do, but when it comes across, do they go back on that little bit of a sidewalk and then through the crosswalk again to the next walk? Or how would they?
I think that's better because you're going to have, in a really heavy use situation, you could have a car, say here at the in the drive-through, and you've still got 2 lanes of traffic, but I'd rather not be, and you have a car, you might have a car leaving who's going out to East Main Street, and their, bias would be to cut this corner. And I'd rather not have anybody, I'd rather have somebody go to the sidewalk and then come off and not be, because again, we are going to have, I'd rather not have them in the path of that person going around the corner.
Okay, no, that's perfectly right.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. So.
Bob looks like he has a question about that.
Through you, Amy, it's not so much about the crosswalk in the parking lot. I just want to back up just a little bit about the picnic table area that Lisa was referring to. The AAB code does require 5% of picnic tables or minimum of 1 to be handicapped accessible. Okay. The table needs to sit on the same type of material that the walkway is made out of, which is pavement, concrete, stone dust, paver patio, bricks, or whatever, something like that. The platform that the picnic table sits on does not have to be specifically concrete or pavement. It can be the same material that the walkway uses.
Okay, well, it would be in this case thank you for clarifying the exact definition of what's necessary.
Yes, thank you for that. But as I say, I've seen it in action, and it has to be, whether it's concrete or a hard surface. Those chairs cannot manage on crushed stone.
Of course, yeah.
All right, thank you for that. And then the other question that I have is, in looking at Lori's questions about the sidewalks coming into the building. And Lori might be able to address this, is the complete streets. Doesn't Complete Streets give you specifics as to how those sidewalks are, the width and what's around them, Lori?
The Complete Streets program isn't really applicable here because it has to do with the roadways, not interior design of a commercial property. But this sidewalk area around the building is of a significant width. So I would say it's sufficient for the queuing of the people for their orders. And then
No. I don't mean on the inside of it. I mean on the outside. You'd mentioned on the outside, when I was looking at the report that you had, that they were looking to just do a very small and the 5 foot and not have the grass side of it. The two that come down from Bartlett Street and East Main Street, not the inside.
Well, that's because it's consistent with the width of the sidewalk elsewhere. So the sidewalk currently directly abuts the roadway. And so for consistency's sake, the sidewalk here would directly abut the roadway. And there is Cape Cod berm along the sidewalk currently. So that is why Scott Charpentier said that he wanted here. He wants a consistent berm.
Well,
And so you also have to remember the topography of the parcel. So the sidewalk is at the high point, and then the topography goes down from there to where the drive-through location is. And the same is true on the opposite side, Route 20. You have the sidewalk directly abutting the roadway, and it's separated by curb. So this is just such a small stretch of sidewalk. It makes sense to me that they would continue the existing condition.
and are you talking about coming down from Bartlett to 9 or from East Main Street? Because they're two different locations.
In both locations, it makes sense that you would be consistent with your materials as what exists elsewhere. You know, the consistency of the sidewalk on Bartlett Street, as well as the consistency of the sidewalk on East Main.
All
So
right,
this is going to be maintained ultimately by the town and Mass DOT.
so again, my concern is onto 20 from Bartlett Street. There's a section that is so narrow that you almost can't get a chair through, whether it's for the vegetation or whatever, on Bartlett Street, where if we're looking back at this, yes, that cursor, so from there and you go back just a little bit, it's very difficult to get through. And maybe that needs to be addressed with the town, because that should have been wider. It's just way too narrow. And then coming out onto 20, I'm not as concerned about East Main, but coming onto 20, as it comes around the bend, I don't know why that wouldn't be part of the complete streets, because it's right there on 20. And there's the traffic and there's the stoplight, and you need as much protection as you can, especially, I mean, I've literally walked there with a mother, a baby carriage and a baby, and I've walked with this young man that's in the wheelchair. And that is a very dangerous corner. So I don't think by just making it look good, I think we need to address the other problems that may be happening on that section of Bartlett as well. So,
Oh, sorry, 5-foot walkway is our regulation.
and is there
What
no,
we require, and that's what Mass DOT requires. And the AAB requires a minimum sidewalk width of 3 feet. So 5 foot is totally appropriate in this location.
but I thought with the complete streets, there was more than just the 5-foot sidewalk, also the
No.
grass.
No, in a downtown location where we're having, you know, we're interested in having sidewalk seating in front of restaurants. Then, you know, when you're interested in having streetscape furniture like benches and decorative lights, it would be appropriate to have wider sidewalks, but this isn't a downtown location, this is a highway. So a 5-foot sidewalk is completely appropriate for this location.
Well, I still think that we have to address the other part of Bartlett Street, because even though they only say 3 feet, when you're going on your own and you're pushing something or you're riding in something, that 3 feet is narrow as can be. So whether the AAB has requirements, we should do a little bit better on our safety and not just do because the requirements say so.
Is it an issue with the vegetation?
Yeah, maybe, but, or the sidewalk's broken, but I would recommend that somebody check that out, because it's so dangerous that I've seen people just not use the sidewalk and go into that corner on the street. And because we've addressed it, and somebody gets hit, we're liable for that.
I'll definitely check it out.
All right, that's, I'm done for now. Thank you very much for letting me have my space, and Jim, as always, you did a great job.
I'm assuming there's a curb between the sidewalk and the road too, at least.
Yes. And I, just to further Lori's point, especially in regard to the sidewalk on East Main Street, if you go further west in front of number 168, there's the maybe an inches of grass plot here. And And so not having a grass plot is consistent with that. And in addition, as Lori notes, there is a quick drop off of grade down from the south side of East Main Street right now toward the site. And if you put a grass plot between this sidewalk and the curb line of East Main Street, you would end up actually crowding out some more of the vegetation that grows in there and provide some visual buffer. And I think the grass plot there at the curb line is probably less valuable really than the vegetation that will be growing back in and is planted and will constitute the visual buffer of the site to the abutters.
Yeah. In my opinion, though, actually, it comes back to the drive-through. I think the drive-through makes this whole site more dangerous, and it makes it tight, and the parking would be better, the traffic flow would be better. I don't see any ice cream places in the area with drive-throughs. I feel like it's probably causing if the drive-through wasn't there, you could have a better sidewalk and fit the trees. It's a big concern to me.
I would like to just ask a question. Keep hearing somebody say the drive-through is dangerous. Can you explain, if you're concluding the drive-through is dangerous, can you give us specifics as to why you believe that?
Sure, it's just the movement of cars. Like, you have them coming in off of East Main Street, they're coming in off of Route 20. There's just more of a flow of cars through that parking lot. People are crossing.
But with,
I went to Ullman's and they have the whole front blocked off so people can safely stand in line, and there's handicap parking, and they don't have a drive-through, and they're still super, super successful. Kimball's Farm in Lancaster, I've gone there. They're not parking and facing the lines for the ice cream people. They are super, super successful. They don't have a drive-through. They have soccer fields there that are super busy, and they have people coming and going, but yet they don't need the drive-through to make it successful.
and Amy, I understand what you're saying, but a place like Kimball's is an example. They absolutely want people to get out of the car. They have entertainment there all year round. They want people to get out of their cars. This building is very small, and I keep hearing people saying, oh, it's dangerous. If there were not a drive-through, people would still be driving into that parking lot and out of that parking lot. So I'd really like to know, instead of people just saying the drive-through is dangerous, what specifically about it in your mind makes it dangerous?
I'd
I
like,
was
I'd like
talking
to,
about the Kimball's in Lancaster. They don't have entertainment there, but they still did not put a drive-through in.
I'd like to answer that, Amy. The drive-through, most especially on 20, comes at a place where there's a lot of traffic, and it goes into a 2-lane at the stoplight. People coming from the stoplight heading east are traveling from a red light that wants to catch up and get moving. And that double lane breaks down pretty much in front of the, what's appearing here, in front of the driveway. Bob Federico brought up a point a while ago about Dunkin' Donuts and having the extra traffic coming out onto 20 and how dangerous that was. So if this is such a popular spot, where are we going to put the excess when it does come across and then it's coming out into the streets, whether it be from East Main Street or from 20? It's not a surprise that the motion of vehicles causes a little bit more danger than while they're constantly in, the engines are on and they're moving forward and they're trying to get in, and they're creating I guess the best way is to say, yes, look at Dunkin' Donuts. Look at what happens when it backs out into the street. And if it was just a regular place where you go in and park your car and you walk to the building, there's far less chance of somebody getting hit. So I don't think that should be a surprise.
I
Go
would just,
ahead.
if I could, Lisa, across the street, just off the picture here, there's a drive-through. And I think the attribution of the problems that are inherent in a Dunkin' Donuts drive-through to any other drive-through, I think is just kind of not fair.
Well, no, Bob mentioned 3 places when he talked about it, and that was one of them. But that other drive-through's been there way before I had to pass the bylaw that said no drive-throughs in Business Zone B. So this is the only other drive-through that we would have. It's got to be special permitted because it isn't as easy as a by right. And I don't think it's a good location for it myself. I think the drive-through is a real big danger.
So if I could add here, I would agree with you, Lisa, if the original plan that was drawn were still the case. The original plan had people coming directly out of the drive-through, the pickup being on the most westerly side of the building, and those cars would continue straight to a second curb cut on Route 20. And we brought in a respected traffic engineer after the beginning of this project who said that is not good planning. But what he said is there is a very easy way to make the traffic all come back into the primary entrance exit here is the one at Route 20. So let's face it, the only time this is going to be a busy location is when people are buying ice cream in the warm months of the year. Whether, I don't care whether we have 10 cars an hour or 60 cars an hour, those people are going to drive in, what you're saying, without the drive-through. They get out of the car, they go over to the building, they go back to their car, they still drive in, they still drive out. The drive-in does not make for a great number of more traffic. What is happening with restaurants, and when I say restaurants, I'm not talking sit-down restaurants. The studies have shown that more and more people are not going into places, and people want the convenience of being able to go in, pick up their order with a drive-through. So by adjusting the traffic at the suggestion of this board, at the suggestion of the town planner, town engineer, and when we brought our traffic engineer from Vanessa & Associates, he agreed absolutely this plan is, is much better. We asked him specifically, does a drive-through create a dangerous situation? And he said, no, as long as you have markings for pedestrian crossing, it's no different than people walking from a parking lot to the building or to the picnic areas. And there are many places where there are successful and safe drive-throughs, and he saw nothing about this site that makes it dangerous. And yet people, both in social media and here, are saying, oh, that's dangerous. So I'm asking specifically, it's easy to make a conclusion, but what are the facts that make you draw that conclusion?
If you're now, there's, like I said, Bob Federico mentioned 2 or 3 places that have backups when they get busy. If we're looking at this theoretically, and you have people coming in through drive-through, 13 lined up, and you've got people coming in both places, your people exiting who've already gotten ice cream that's probably running down their hands now because they're doing it through a drive-through, comes around the corner and they're going to exit onto 20. And 20 gets backed up from the light. And so there's 2 lines of cars there. So now all of that coming through that area, that once they've had their ice cream, has to exit the building. Unfortunately, the road doesn't look like this very often when there's only 2 or 3 cars on it, and the speed with which they're moving on this road. We have the trucks coming into Bartlett Street for all the warehousing down there. We've got the school buses. We've got the kids that are learning to drive at the school across the way. There's a lot of things that are happening. If this is just looking at it statically, you're absolutely right. Statically, why would there be a problem? But reality, sometimes it works out a little bit more than theory. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I consider it to be dangerous. Now, it is, maybe it is just a thought, but I think the 2 things that we've talked about since day one is the inappropriateness of the area for that and the style. So
You're saying that Bob has talked about the 3 locations. I'm going to ask Bob a question, but first I'd just like to say this, if we get a certain, I shouldn't say we, if the owner gets a certain number of cars per hour, first of all, as a private identity new location, I keep stressing this is not a McDonald's, a Burger King, a Starbucks, a Dunkin' Donuts. Those brand names bring in lots and lots of people. This is a private brand, a private owner. So the traffic that's going to come into this place is going to come into the same driveways in, and they will exit from the same driveways out. The drive-through is not going to make it more unsafe. You're saying if there are 13 cars backed up, if there are 13 cars backed up, most people are not going to remain in your cars. Look at as an example at CVS. If there are 13 cars backed up there, people are not going to wait. They're going to park and go inside. That's true of almost any location. What I'm saying here is whether customers come in and they're looking to park in a parking space or whether they are put on the outside to go around to the drive-through, that does not make the point of access egress at Route 20 any better or any worse. I'd ask Lori and Bob whether they see any danger caused by the drive-through. Thank you.
I have a quick thing to add first. Where the parking is in front of the lines, as you know, that has been a sticking point for me. If there wasn't a drive-through there, that whole section of parking could be moved behind the building. So people are parking behind the building, and you could have a safer area there with tables that are even closer to where you're getting the ice cream.
Well, behind the building is going to be, it's effectively a loading zone
Mhm.
for this, for this. And if there's no parking here, then you're going to increase the number of people who are walking across, because these are going to be obviously the most desirable spaces. Then you're going to increase the number of people who are, and we can't use this because there'll be more people walking across the path of travel of cars. I understand the
James,
sentiment, but I don't
I'm sorry to
think it works.
interrupt, James. We were just talking about the drive-through. I don't want to get off topic. And I know that Bob had his hand raised. I'd like to focus on that for a few minutes.
Through Amy, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you. To respond to Lisa's comment, a while back, there was a traffic jam with trucks on Bartlett Street getting into one of the trucking facilities. And somebody raised concerns about it. And I, using my typically sarcastic sense of humor, said, oh my word, what are we going to do when Dunkin' Donuts floods into the street? What are we going to do when the traffic lights start backing up at Christmas time at the Shops Way? And what are we going to do when Tugas Farms parking spills all the way down to the end of Ball Street onto Church Street? Okay, that was meant to be tongue in cheek. And my point, my subtle point or not so subtle point, was that no matter where you have, whether it's a drive-through or not, because the Shops and Tugas Farms is not a drive-through, at certain times of the year with certain circumstances, you may have a backup onto a busy street. That's the reality, okay? If this place had an event and it did not have a drive-through, you still have the chance of traffic backing up onto the street, okay? I never said this was a dangerous situation, so please strike that from the record. I just said these events do happen, okay? So I just wanted to make that clarification. I don't have an opinion about the drive-through or the parking situation. That's you guys to decide. But I just want to make the point that when I sent that email out, it was supposed to be tongue-in-cheek and to raise a question that, you know, no matter what happens, whether it's a drive-through or just a parking lot, given special circumstances or a perfect storm, you will get traffic backed up onto a road.
And that's,
This isn't Logan Airport, folks.
well, Dunkin' Donuts is a perfect example of always having cars backed up onto 20. But the last thing I'm going to say about this is that if the ice cream business fails, like every other one in town has failed, and the owner decides to sell the property, it's already set up for anybody else coming in to use that drive-through. That's the concern, is down the road, not that this person is going to do it, but the people after are going to do it. And we have to start thinking further away than just the immediate. So that's why I say that.
I'd like to respond to that if I could, and I think Amy would agree with me on this. The planning board over the last, Amy can tell us how many years, has started to suggest that some of these special permits could be made personal to the owner and to this business. I know I've been before the board. It was something the planning board never did before. As I have told the town planner yesterday, we would be willing to concede that issue. Absolutely. This property owner is saying, look, I want to build my business. If it doesn't make it, I am certainly willing to say special permits with me. If I go to sell the site, you're back to square one. And Amy, I know you did it on some of my projects. I believe you've done it on others. So that would alleviate any concern about him selling and having a Starbucks, a McDonald's, or whatever other, a Dunkin' Donuts coming in, because I would agree with you, for a big brand name, it does bring in more traffic. And by the way, since we're focusing on the safety of the drive-through, if anything, when there is a crowd, if you make everybody park and then walk up, you're not getting less traffic, but in fact, you're directing traffic better if they're going to the drive-through, and you don't have to worry about pedestrians at 2 or 3 different locations, walking to the building and walking back. There's the one crosswalk that is just going to be south of the building. Amy, could you address the issue, what the planning board has done with some of the special permits, making it personal to the owner, and any change in ownership or any substantial change in use for the applicant, they would have to come back. Am I correct on that?
Yep, we have done that.
And my client is offering that to alleviate any concerns about this, saying, oh, this is a precedent. Now, if Starbucks comes in, they've got this in a drive-through. We can't make it any more clear that my client is not building this as a developer to flip to a franchise of a Dunkin' or Starbucks or any other place. He is trying this business. His brother has been in the food business. He found this location. It's got lots of frontage on Route 20. He believes Northborough does not have a place that specializes in ice cream. He thought this would be a good location. He's trying to make this an attractive location for what he is trying to do. He's willing to say, if I sell it, back to square one.
Well, I can appreciate that, but he does set precedent. So when it goes to the next company that goes to the ZBA, the precedent has been set because it's the first time a drive-through was allowed. And second of all, he owns a few businesses on this road. He owns the building that Sammy's was in. That could have been a cute little ice cream place. So, you know, a little bit's a little disingenuous, I think, in that once you set precedent, as you know, Marshall, you set precedent. And once it's
Now, here's where I disagree with you. And again, Amy was part of the planning board, and I follow what the planning board does. We were doing a project at 1 Lyman Street that was a small warehouse with an office inside. And the planning board had great concerns. What if it became a big shipping location? And they made it, that's when they proposed to my client, we want this to be personal to you. I think the planning board does a good job on that. So it's very clear the way they conditioned it, that it does not set a precedent. And Amy would agree that just because somebody rents it for this, there's a big difference between this person coming in, focusing primarily on ice cream and some breakfast and lunch sandwiches, versus a Dunkin' Donuts or Dunkin', whatever they call themselves, or a Starbucks or any of the other locations. Believe me, my client would love to have the drive-through filled with 13 cars and every space filled. But for a small, unknown name location, not a big franchise, it's not going to happen. And we're going to offer the ZBA that they can use the same condition the planning board has used. My client, you're right, owns property in Northborough. He wants to be a good citizen, bring in good businesses. He doesn't want to cause problems for the town. So how much more can we do than say, okay, we'll concede that issue. Right away, he is saying, I can't sell to those franchises. And if I ever sell, no matter who I sell to, they go back to the same position he is now. Got to draw plans, go to the boards, including you. And it's not going to be the big, fearful business that you're thinking about. And we were talking about the drive-through. And again, I haven't heard anything from anybody why the drive-through makes it dangerous. But I want to make clear, you don't have to think ahead and worry about a Starbucks, a Dunkin', or anything else like that.
I just wanted, then I'll call him, Lori. I see your hand is up. I just want to answer Marshall because he asked me about the condition. But we did set that condition. But I don't know if it would stand up in court because of precedent. So I do have to agree with Lisa on that because it hasn't gotten to that point where they say, well, you approved, you know, the warehouse for this person. So how can you say no to the next person, even if we have a condition? But we did do that, hoping that it would stand in court, but we haven't been challenged yet. And I do see Lori's hand's been up for a while, so I was going to call on Lori.
Thank you. You know, this committee is advisory to the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board. And I understand that the vast majority of the members haven't sat on one of those boards. So I just wanted to explain what types of things that the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals can take into account when reviewing applications. And one of the really important criteria is that the Planning Board and the ZBA cannot judge applications in an arbitrary and capricious way. So they have to look at the existing zoning bylaws. They have to look at the rules and regulations, the Planning Board rules and regulations. They have to look at the design guidelines, and they have to think. So if they decide to vote against a project, they have to ensure that they are not voting because of something that is arbitrary and capricious. And the fact that this particular property at some point in the future, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever, that is a crystal ball. And absolutely, the future of this property is not before the ZBA. What is before the ZBA is this particular application. So you need to put that out of your head, what this could be 5 years, 10 years, 30 years down the road, because that is not acting in accordance with the regulations. You can only look at this application. So, I mean, certainly you can make that suggestion to the ZBA because you are not the permitting authority, but they cannot take that into account. That is not something that is going to hold up in court. So I would step away from that argument.
Dario, you had.
Yeah, and I think what Lori said certainly makes sense. So it can become whatever it wants to be in the future, and we can't control that. And we just got to worry about what it is now. 2 points. You asked how it could be more dangerous or less safe. To me, it's very, very clear that it could be more dangerous, the drive-through, because you have cars exiting and there's a crosswalk where people are exiting going to the seating area. So you're mixing vehicles and people, both of which will have newly served ice cream in their hands, trying not to drip it on themselves. And every one of those cars will cross that sidewalk that every one of those people want to cross at the same time to get to the picnic tables. That doesn't exist across the street. It doesn't exist at Dunkin' Donuts. It doesn't exist at a McDonald's. When you cross vehicles and people with objects in their hand to distract them, that's dangerous. That adds less safety to the project, just in and of itself. Every single drive-through will cross that nice little sidewalk where we're trying to attract all the people to go sit in the picnic tables. Had nothing to do with Route 20. So that's, well, if you want something that shows where it could be more dangerous, that's a perfect example, because people will be looking at the stuff in their hands, not necessarily at the sidewalk or the cars in front of them. If that helps.
Okay, thank you. All right, it's now 10:13. We have to decide how we're gonna go forward with this. I don't know, Tom, if you're going to want to look at the building again, or if you've decided not to and you want to just go to the ZBA with what you have. I don't know if you want to talk to your client. We have to write a letter to the ZBA if we're ready to go forward. We have to think of some, line items that we're going to put in our memo. Or you come back again if you're going to look into the design a little more. So I guess that's my first question.
I believe I need to speak with my client and Marshall before I could give you a definitive answer regarding the building design.
Okay. Yep.
So Marshall, I guess.
You want to
you
just
wanna
let
make a
Lori know?
recommendation to continue, or do you want to
I
give
would
an
ask.
opinion?
I absolutely do. And, we respect the opinions of everybody, and we hope that the people on the committee will also respect our viewpoints. I'm not going to answer every point that was made, but I do suggest that we'll look at it again, and I'd ask if this committee is willing to perhaps set something up for next week. The ZBA meeting is not until the 26th, so we still have some time. But I would ask the committee for another time for us to meet.
I can do it. I'm not sure about other board members if you can meet next week. It shouldn't, hopefully won't be as long, but who knows?
I would agree.
Next Thursday is the 21st. I don't know if Lori and Bob are even available.
I could do it.
Yep, Bob and Lori can other board members?
I don't have my calendar with me, but I'll check.
Yeah, I'm open right now.
Okay,
And Tom, is that okay with you?
I currently have a meeting scheduled for the 21st in the morning. I'll have to see if it can be moved.
thank you.
What time is your meeting at the 8:30 time frame, Tom, or later?
It's 9 to 12 and it's in Shrewsbury.
Okay. Is there any other day that week that you might be able to do it, Amy and other members?
I could do Wednesday the 20th, but I don't know about other.
20th would work for me.
I cannot do the 20th.
I cannot either.
Oh, yeah.
Does it have to be first thing in the morning? Could it be later in the day, perhaps, for anybody?
Later in the day would work on the 20th.
Yeah, I'm not good. I'm not good after 11 on most days.
Amy, I defer to you.
I think maybe you pick a date with Lori and email the committee, because we could go down unless everybody here has ideas, like, I'm pretty open. But, you'd have to work that through Lori and Bob, and then I don't know about the other committee members.
What about, we've talked about that Wednesday and that Thursday. What about Friday? That would be the 22nd.
Sure.
As long as I'm done by 9 o'clock.
That
Would
wouldn't
the
work.
would the board be willing to start at 8?
Lori
That's,
can't.
I probably wouldn't be able to get
Okay,
here.
well, we would very much like to have Bob and Lori as well as the members of the committee, so,
I could do 8:15.
okay.
It would be tight, but I could make that happen.
I have a big inspection at Dick's Sporting Goods at 9:30. It's taken me 2 weeks to wrangle in.
I would think that if we were to start at 8:15, we would be done by 9:30. It, I'm looking to members of our team for Tom and
That would work for me.
Yep.
so to the chair, Amy, you want to pull your committee on Friday at 8:15?
Sure. Dario and Lisa and Dave. How does next Friday at 8:15 sound to anybody?
I don't have my calendar, but it may be possible.
I think Dave might be still on mute, but I can make it work. I just penciled it in.
Okay. So
Dave,
it
star
sounds like
six?
Friday at 8:15, once Dario double checks his calendar just to make sure. Or if Tom can move his meeting from Thursday.
I can make the Friday morning.
Okay. We can't hear you, Dave, but we would still have a majority, so. We could still meet Friday, the 22nd at 8:15. Oh,
That
David
works-
said he
That
can
works
make
for
it.
our team.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
I
All
can
right,
do it. Yeah, I can do it.
okay.
Terrific.
To the chair and the committee, we thank you for your comments, and we will hopefully see you next week then.
Okay, sounds great. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. All right, thanks, board. It's running late, so I have to run, but I did have something to say really quickly. Well, it's probably not quick, so it's hard to do. But I did want to bring up that I did want to go back to the sign bylaw updates. There's going to be possibly a new facade and sign.
Hey, Dave, can you mute your phone? Thank you.
There's probably going to be a new sign and facade program. As part of our design review guidelines, we talk about facades a little bit, but not about signs. And I went to Shrewsbury, and I can share it with the whole board. Shrewsbury actually updated the bylaws to have a town center district because they want to do what we're trying to do, revitalize downtown. And I can send it out to the whole board. They have a lot of great stuff in their bylaws. Right now, a couple things that we've talked about with master plan is awning signs are not allowed, yet they're going up around town. Other towns allow awning signs, but it must be part of the awning and not more than 25% and not lit. That was something I was thinking we could add if everybody agreed. Window signs also. Window signs right now in our bylaw are only supposed to advertise a special day or event. Only should be covering 30% of the window. But yet when you look at our downtown, like, for example, the mobile station, it is covered with Coke and Red Bull, and right now, those aren't allowed in our bylaw. So either we'll have to go through and do a big sweep and get rid of all the window signs in town, or maybe look at what other towns do where they allow 25% of their windows covered. And towns like Hudson, who redid their downtown, have very strict descriptions for what's allowed for their window signs. I have examples, but I could share them next time. But I think if we're really gonna move forward and make a difference, we need to update the design guidelines for signs, and we have to update the sign bylaw. I have one that we did 2 years ago. When it went to town meeting, John Campbell got up and said, let's wait for the master plan. And then at the last master plan community meeting, I think it was Lisa who got up and asked Rick Leaf, what came out of the master plan with the signs? And he said, well, that's up to you because you guys are design review. So I'm bringing it back to design review and planning board. I can send out the sign bylaw that went out 2 years ago. It was some updated definitions for things we didn't have, like the gasoline canopy signs. There were actually very few changes. But then we have to decide, do we also add in awning signs? Do we update the window signs? I spent this week and I took the middle section of our sign bylaw and put it into a table. So it's not like 4 pages of wording. It would say what's allowed, you know, for a wall sign, what's allowed for a freestanding sign, and it's clearer. Oh, yeah, Bob, you have a question?
Yeah, just to clarify, signs on awnings in town are not allowed. It's already in the book. The signs that are on awnings right now are all done with a variance from the ZBA.
Okay, there are a couple, but I didn't check into it and I don't want to
couple.
bring their names up.
There's a couple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
wanted to make that clarification.
Right. But that was one thing we talked about, even Laura, you'd mentioned you like that look for downtown, maybe some nice awnings and maybe the sign versus the big plastic lid above it. You could have a nice sign on the awning.
Personally, I think it's really a classy look, and a lot of communities have that. And the signs tend to be really small, and they're in the skirt of the awning.
Yes.
And so I think that would be a great way to not clutter up the front facade.
Yes. So I thought I could send out everybody what I've done so far. I'm sure the table would need tweaking. I could send out the sign by law that we talked about 2 years ago. I could send out the new table that I did. I could send out what Shrewsbury has done. There was only 10 pages and it had a lot of great things. One thing that I thought would be important, especially for downtown, Shrewsbury prohibited internally illuminated signs and any kind of sign made of plastic or vinyl. Like you notice these cheap vinyl banners going on the sides of buildings as signs, and that's really not a look for revitalizing the downtown or any part of Main Street. So that was another thing, but I can send it all out to you because I know I'm just throwing it out there and it's getting late. Sure, Bob?
Amy, can I make one request?
Sure.
One of the things that's been happening quite often since I've been here for the past 6.5 years is that we get a lot of requests for variances for the size of the signs at the Shops Way.
Yes.
Okay. Right now, the limit is 100 square feet. And it's, you know, it takes a lot of time to get a sign if they want 150 square feet. Can I recommend that you go to 200 square feet? And also that the sign should not extend more than a third or 50% of the width of the tenant space?
Sure. Industrial has that right now. It can't be more than 30% of the length of the building.
Yeah.
And there are other towns, like the sign is 10% of the facade. So like you're saying, like we have 32 square feet and on some
Right.
walls that's too big and other walls it's too small.
Right. But if you limit it to a certain width of the facade, that
Yep.
may help control it. We had that when I was in Millbury, they had that as a sign by law up at their shops area. And it seemed to work really well. So the sign doesn't kind of overpower the facade.
Okay. How about I send everything I have out to everybody, and if they have comments, we'll send them back
Okay,
to Lori. And then in October, we can discuss
Yeah.
the sign bylaw and the ideas we have.
all right,
That'd be great.
okay.
If we have time, quickly, I was gonna approve the minutes unless, I think, did I send like one, like, or two changes, Lori, that were minor? I can't remember now.
I didn't see an email. Maybe I missed it.
Oh, okay. Well, we could bump them to, I'll bump it. I'll go back and check to see if I had an update. But I definitely.
You had them for planning board, but I didn't see one for
I
design.
might have, yeah, and maybe I replied to just Michelle by mistake. But it is almost 10:30, so I have to run. I'm sure everybody else has to run. Do I have, anybody else have anything they want to add quickly?
I agree with you on putting that together, and I think that the percentage of the sign should be dictated by the area that it's going to be in. So,
Okay.
and I think we really have a lot of tweaking to do with that. So I think it's important we do that and have that being used. Because if we don't change that, what's the point of going through a whole sign and facade program with old laws that bylaws that we've wanted to change for years?
Okay. Sounds good.
And
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
all moved.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Lisa Maselli,
Aye.
Dario,
Hi.
Amy's and I, and Dave Varon. He seconds. Oh, he's texting me. He says aye. All right. Have a good day, everybody. I'll see
Thank
you
you.
next week. Thank you.
Bye now.
All right, bye.